What's going on, guys? I just wanted to go over if you should maybe use bands or chains in your training and how you might use them in your training for weightlifters specifically. So there's a few different reasons why I would use it. I'll first go over why I would not use it. I would not use it just to purely, if you're targeting just improving your maximal strength, I wouldn't look at this as a sole tool or a one method you could use to be able to bring your max strength up. You will get strong off of using bands or chains, but you won't do it, if it makes any sense, you won't do it directly. It's going to affect you most because it's going to improve how fast you apply force, how fast you absorb force. It's also going to improve how basically your power, your speed, the speed of movement and your power output. That's what it's going to improve, which can then in turn help you to improve your maximal strength if your speed is something that's really, really lagging. One thing I would not do, I would not use it on snatch or clean and jerk. I just don't think it's worth it. I've seen some people will use small, very small chains, or they will use very, very light bands on a snatch or a clean or a jerk. I've done it, I've messed around with it. I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like it's safe enough for me to tell everyone else to do it. It's something that I fuck around with when I'm bored. So I wouldn't think about doing it with that. But when it comes to your presses, so maybe overhead press or push press, if you can do it off of blocks safely, back squat and front squat, and then deadlifts, I think those are completely legitimate exercises to use it with. So the main reason I would use it is, like I said, is to improve your speed and power output, because at some point when you're starting to improve your strength in terms of your static strength, so your back squat, your front squat, your deadlifts, your presses, your pulls, what you're going to find is that you keep on getting stronger and stronger and stronger, but at some point it feels like it's having a lesser return into your other stuff. So you might notice that when you first started getting your back squat and your deadlift up, all of a sudden when you put 20 kilos on them, you could jump higher, you could sprint faster, you could snatch and clean and jerk more, you could even deadlift more. But then once you start getting to that point where, let's say you get to like the double body weight mark, so you go from 205 on a back squat to 210 or to 215, you notice it doesn't quite carry over the same as it once did before. Like before, you saw like a like-for-like increase in power and your strength, and now it doesn't. One of the reasons for this is because you're getting stronger, but you're not converting your body's ability to be able to apply that force faster. So you're getting stronger and stronger and stronger, but your body's rate of force development isn't improving alongside of it. This is where the bands and chains can come in. The way that I would use them would be to always be conservative when you first start out. Don't go to using them like some of us do, like you see someone's doing the BD, like you see Never Train Legs doing, where he's using it every single day because he's built up to that. I've built up to using accommodating resistance fairly often. Try doing it once or twice a week on a squat, a deadlift, and maybe a press. I wouldn't do it on push press straight away. If you want to use it on overhead press or even close grip bench or something like that, that is fine. But use it on one of them each. Make sure you're not using anything more than 5 to 10% of your 1 rep max in accommodating resistance. So if the bands, when you measure them at the top, weigh 20 kilos and your best back squat is 200 kilos, that's perfect. If you're going anything above that, sometimes it can have a bit of a negative effect, like it can feel really fucky, like compared to the normal lift, like it changes the lift so much, it doesn't feel like a normal squat anymore or a press anymore. And as low as 5%. So if I was going with the back squat, I could go as low as 10 kilos of accommodating resistance at the top in total, and that would go for the same for chain weights as well. The chains are obviously easier to measure because they don't change, whereas bands, depending on what brand you get, how tall you are, what rack you set them up in, and also how long you've had them, the resistance will change. So just make sure you keep on top of that and always have that ballpark figure of 5 to 10% in them. The next thing you want to do is look at where you can produce the most speed and force or power anyway when it comes to straight weight percentages. So it's between 40, whereas where you're going to move the weight the fastest but probably not apply as much force, to I think it's 75 or 80% where you're going to produce the most force, but you're not necessarily going to do it with the most speed. But speed is still a factor. That's like strength speed work. So it's where you're applying large levels of force, but you're still doing it with some element of acceleration where you're still looking to move the bar fast. Anywhere between 40 and 80% is where you can use the bands and chains. And I know that's a very, very wide bracket, but it depends on what you're doing and what phase you're in. And if you're getting very, very close to competition, you might be looking at only using between 40 and 70% of your 1 rep max to make sure you're keeping in there, you're keeping speed up, you're making sure you're moving things fast. Whereas if you were in a big strength block, you might be using 70 to 80%. But those are the kind of percentages I would use. I would also look at something like either your history of what volume you can handle at certain loads, or Prilipin's chart. And when you start using bands on chains and you throw it over the bar, look at what percentage of the weight you are in straight weight and go with the lowest volume prescribed for that. So if you're looking at 60 to 70%, the Prilipin's chart says you can do 25 reps to be optimal, or you can do about 15 to 18 reps as minimal. I would do the 15 to 18 reps to begin with and use the chain and band weight, because you're looking to get the most out of the least with this. Because chains will beat you up a bit, like the DOMs is quite bad, but it's not that bad. Bands will actually, if you overdo them, and I can vouch for this, and a bunch of my friends can vouch for this, it makes your joints feel weird and it beats your CNS up if you do too much of it. So get the most out of the least. Start by doing it on one squat, either your back or front squat once a week, and do it on a press once a week. And if you want to, you can fuck around with stuff like chin-ups and rows with using band resistance as well if you want to. But start off by doing the minimum amount of volume you can with it. in that 40 to 80% range. Obviously, the faster you're looking to get, the less weight you're going to use. The more you're looking at increasing power, so just your like overall force output with an element of acceleration, the heavier you would go. I would do that close to competitions personally. Or when you're looking at basically peaking your 1 rep max for a squat or a bench or a deadlift. That's when I'd look at doing it, because the acceleration component of the bands and chains is going to carry over into the main lift, and because you're going heavy enough, it'll be similar enough to your 1 rep max loads that it will carry over a bit more. Whereas like the lower loads with the band and chain resistance, looking at higher velocities, is going to carry over more to like sprinting, jumping performance, and snatching, clean and jerking, because of the speeds involved. So I hope that helps. Those are the reasons why I would program or use bands and chains myself. That's how I look about implementing them. That's how I've started implementing chains back into my training myself. I'm going to be using them on back squats and 1 pull a week. I'm not going to use them on any pressing, because frankly, I've not done enough overhead press, push press or bench press in the last 6 months to really make it worthwhile. But yeah, that's how I would start adding stuff in. If you have any other questions on why you might use bands or chains and different stuff like that, then feel free to like add a comment or shoot me a DM. And I'll try and answer the questions for you. But that's generally, as simply as I think I can put it, as to how I would use them. Again, it's also going to depend on what you have. For some of you, you might have to use bands, because that's the only thing that you can get a hold of yourself, and that's the only thing you can buy. Some of you might be lucky and blessed enough to be at a gym where they have shitloads of chains for you to be able to use on a scale where you can measure them on, and platforms where you can set them up and people don't mind the noise of them. But yeah, consider those things when you're thinking about using bands or chains, or whether you're thinking about discounting them as a training method, because they might actually do a very, very good job for you. And it's good to have other tools in the locker other than just straight weight and just having to go as heavy as possible all the time, or do AMRAPs and stuff to be able to get stronger and to be able to get faster. So add in some plyos, add in some jumps, cut down your rest times so you're recovering faster, and start adding in some band and chain resistance if you can, so that you start moving faster.